Hello and welcome to For What It's Worth, a journal on art, culture, and disability. I'm your host, Christopher Worth. Tonight's topic is speaking specifically to disability. We are more than 650 million worldwide, according to the World Health Organization. Our history is interwoven with every other subculture, but yet we do not think of ourselves as a subculture here in the US and beyond. We are the majority of us among the poorest people. We are among the most uneducated people, and yet we are the largest subculture in the world. Now, many of my colleagues in the disability community would not want me to define us as a subculture. They insist on full integration as being the only solution to the disparities which keep us oppressed within society. I, of course, happen to disagree with this. In the US, we've made great strides within the last 40 years to free ourselves, to allow ourselves to be able to interact with the structure of our society's physical world. We can now get in and out of courthouses. We can now go into any public building, especially state or federal building, that we'd like to. The thing that I think, let me back up. It is also important to understand that even though we've made great strides physically, there are still some pretty deep obstacles to our physical liberation within the way people think about how things are built, how cities are laid out, yada yada. It's less about getting through doors anymore and more about the larger picture. Accessibility isn't about, just putting a ramp in or just putting a wider door in. But tonight's topic isn't about the physical aspect of accessibility. We're making great strides in that. Tonight's topic is about the mental, the way we think of ourselves as a culture, as a disability culture. Now, many of you, including my own family, will, kind of shy away from calling us our own culture because we think of integration as the end-all be-all of a true expression of social justice, when in fact true integration only comes about, I would argue, when a people know themselves. For as flawed as integration has been for the African American community, I point to, and many people will argue that this needs to be revived within the African American community, but I'm not commenting on that. What I point to as a success for the African American developing their own cultural identity in America is the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance brought about many positive changes for the African American. It was a coalescing of all sorts of intellectual pursuits within the African American culture. Music, right? That's what people will point to almost immediately. Poetry, another thing that people are quite aware of. Visual art, science, it all kind of coalesced with the Harlem Renaissance and began to become, the African American began to be able to identify themselves uniquely and move themselves away from move themselves further away, I should say, from being defined by white culture. Now, this didn't just happen because of or during the Harlem Renaissance. It was a long process. And I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a long time for the disabled community to begin to coalesce and see their own gifts, see our own gifts as viable gifts, not only for the wider culture, but for ourselves as individuals within a subculture. I call us a subculture because I believe we have something special. We have something that's uniquely ours. And that makes us a subculture. Now, how that thing is defined, that thing that makes us uniquely ours, well, I haven't really, how that thing is defined, that thing that makes us uniquely a subculture, I haven't been able to begin to define that yet. Of course, like everything, it's in process, but the disabled community has a sort of unique perspective because we have a fortitude, I would say, And because of that fortitude, we have begun within the last 40 years to really define ourselves outside of the walking community, outside of the able-bodied community. It's not that I'm calling for a sort of emancipation. It doesn't work that way. But true integration, we call it mainstreaming, didn't work, at least for my generation. So basically what I'm calling us to do is to more clearly define ourselves. So that's why tonight I'm not going to be able to say to you, these are our gifts. Because I don't think those things have been decided yet. I think that too much of the time we're still relying on the system to tell us what we are, how we act, and what we're capable of. But I argue that it is drawing time, it is drawing near for us to begin to think of ourselves, for us to more fully begin to think of ourselves as a unique and productive a subculture adding to the larger culture. More on this later.